So, Dr. Rob, I'm going to put the first question
Hey,
into
Tami,
the.
you're a good egg. I love working with you, Tami.
I'm not 50 calories. So, okay. So I'm a guy in my mid 20s. I've noticed there's usually a balance of things in life. Not for us addicts, I'm thinking, but anyway, in regards to sexuality, I feel like the far left would be sexual addiction and the far right would be sexual anorexia. How would you describe healthy sexuality for singles who want to wait for marriage? Also, my body has been really feeling the urge to have sex, but that's currently not an option. It doesn't feel like a usual trigger. It feels like my body really just wants a release. Any tips on how to go about this urge? That's a great healthy sexuality question.
It is. They're both. And notice that this man's in his mid 20s. So this isn't someone, if someone 45 was asking that question, I probably would answer it a little bit differently. So I think you're right. In terms of sexual problems, not just sexuality, sexual problems, sex addiction is at one end and anorexia is on the other, or whatever you want to call that. So I wouldn't say that's in a balance for healthy people. I don't think either one of those is particularly balanced. It doesn't mean that when someone dies or you have this, you have a car wreck or something, you don't feel like having sex. That's understandable. And sometimes when you're dating someone and they're really exciting and new, you want to have a lot of sex. So, I think you can have a lot of sex in certain circumstances or not a lot of sex in other circumstances and be perfectly healthy. But when it gets to the sort of the needle moves too far to the right and then you just stop for years, or the needle moves too far to the left and you're having sex 5 times a day, either one of those is an extreme of a problem, not just extremes of sexuality. The other thing is just about sex. So, if you're a sex addict, and I don't know if this person actually is a sex addict or not, from what I can see, first of all, you get to wait till marriage. You can wait as long as you want. No one is required to have sex, and no one is required to have sex in certain circumstances. You get to do whatever is right for you and your partner. So if you ask me how to describe healthy sexuality for singles who want to wait for marriage, I would not say that oral sex or hand jobs are healthy sexuality for people who want to wait. You want to wait, you wait. And Tam and I will describe sex as anything that you would not want a 4-year-old child to see in a public park. So what else can you do? You can kiss, you can hold, you can hug, you can stroke each other's hair, you can do all kind of romantic and intimate things that may make you want to be sexual, but that is the kind of intimacy that makes sex better when you finally get to it. As far as a release, like anyone in their mid 20s, any male in his mid 20s is like, go more than a few days and your body just says, oh my God, where's the sex? It's part of the testosterone that we release, especially at that age. So, and just to say something about age-related testosterone, those men who are 50 and older probably don't get morning erections anymore because your testosterone levels aren't the same as they were when you were 20. But when you're younger, you have morning erections all the time because that's how the body works with testosterone. You release the most of it in the morning. So as far as feeling that you have to take care of something, if you don't like masturbation or masturbation is not acceptable within your spiritual beliefs or whatever that is, then I say don't worry about it because your body will take care of itself. And, just like young teens, if they don't know anything about sex, but they have a wet dream, what we call a nocturnal emission, that's your body saying, whoops, I got to spill some of this out. You got to get rid of some of this. And so you don't have to worry about acting on it. The fact that you feel that way seems very normal and typical for someone your age who's involved with someone and wants to be sexual. But I think your body will take care of itself if that is your concern. Nothing's going to fall off. Nothing's going to break. Nothing's going to stop working because you don't have sex for a while. Your body will take care of itself. So those were 3 questions in one, Tami.
Yes. Well done. Okay. So my husband of 1 year is a porn addict in recovery since 2019. I discovered his porn in 2018. Since then, I'm constantly triggered when I see him look at other women in public, at beaches, or during sex scenes on TV. I'm also a sex and porn addict trying to recover, and I find myself fantasizing constantly about him cheating with these other women and seeking porn with women I think he'd be attracted to. How can I get past these triggers and fantasies and obsessions since he hasn't been active in his addiction for over 2 years now?
So I think this is very typical. I think every spouse, probably for years and years, is going to feel uncomfortable when your man or woman walks down the street and they see someone. Now they might have done this before you found everything out, and then it was like, oh, that's just girls being girls or guys being guys, or, you know, they're looking a little longer, or maybe they look longer than you like, but, you know, they blow it off as not being a problem. But once it comes out that there's an addiction and and you've been betrayed, then every time we even go like this, you're going to wonder what we're thinking. I mean, that's just normal and healthy. I want to say one more thing about this. Oh, I just want to say one thing. Tammy, if you don't mind mentioning it, I would really appreciate it. We just started an online series for porn addicts, and I think it's something we're going to be doing regularly.
Yes.
So can you just say a little bit about that? Because it's a real challenging issue for some people.
Yes, and it's unique. So we've had the Sex Addiction 101 level 1, 2, and 3 work groups, and we have another one starting in October. However, we had a core group of people that were struggling to relate to sex addiction because they didn't act out with other people. It was truly all online, you know, porn addiction, cam girl, cam boy, but not acting out with another person, no hookups, no affair partners, those type of things. So we started a group. It started last Saturday, and we will start another one in October. We've already had a discussion about that.
Nice.
So you'll see that
up.
on seekingintegrity.com. You'll find those work groups. We have a number of work groups. Those are facilitated, live facilitated. So you're not just watching a video, and they're working through. There's homework, and you'll have a foundation of recovery on which to build. So for those of you that's, you know, that you're looking for more structure, you're looking for more education, that's a great fit, low cost, you know, option. So
Great.
yeah.
And I think, you know, we won't talk much about our courses. I'll just simply say part of the reason that I designed them is because you don't get this piece in outpatient therapy. A lot of the lectures and interactions we give and homework and all that are the kind of work that goes on in residential treatment, which just doesn't happen when you meet someone for an hour a week. So doing education, doing homework, meeting as a group to talk about what y'all think about this and how it works into your lives. That's the purpose. You can't do therapy online, just so you know it, but you can do education. So anyway, thank you, Tammy, because I'm really excited about that stuff, and I appreciate your talking about it. What's our next?
No. We have to finish this one. So there's a whole nother chunk of this.
Sorry.
He gets distracted. So I want to go back to here's what I picked up on the most. So he's working on his recovery. It sounds like he's doing what he needs to do. But what I hear is you are a sex and porn addict, and you're struggling, because I'm also a sex and porn addict trying to recover, and I find myself fantasizing about him cheating with these other women. So I'm not. What I felt was that I would love to have you engage more in your recovery, because I think the more you focus on what you need to do to take care of you, the less you'll be triggered by what he's doing or what he's not doing for his program. It's like two people in AA. You know, yeah, you need to support each other, but at the end of the day, you got to take care of your own recovery. And so we were talking about resources. There's a free drop-in group for women on Tuesday nights, and Lacey Bentley leads that. There's a core group of women who are sharing, and their peer group supported, so they continue to support each other beyond that Tuesday night group. That's unique. Yeah, that's free. That's a unique group, but it's much needed. So I would encourage you to do that, but I don't know what else you're doing for your recovery. But I feel like, you know, all those trigger things, you know, are putting you in a more vulnerable place. And I really encourage you to work on what you need to do to take care of you.
Yeah, Tammy, you're so right. And I wish I'd brought that up a few minutes ago, because you beat me to it. Because you know, sometimes when I'm fantasizing about what my partner might or might not do, it's really like a projection. You know, sometimes, and I want to just explain that sometimes I might be really angry at you, and I do this with my husband all the time. I'm kind of bored. I'm not sure what we should do tonight. And I turn to him and say, what should we do tonight? Rather than, in other words, I think that my confusion about the evening is actually coming from him. And so we project our thoughts and feelings onto someone else. I do it with my dog. My dog has been ill, and a friend of mine has family therapy issues. And so, physical issues going on, a family member. And I've been looking at my dog lately, oh, poor baby. And and I realized that's where the feelings are about this family member that I love. I'm kind of putting them on the dog and saying, is he going to be okay? And I'm worried. And so what I'm saying is that while you were this is still keeping you active in your addiction. And I'm just curious, like, first of all, you're in these fantasies. Is that congruent with your recovery? And are these really fantasies about your spouse doing something with someone else, or is it really something you're cooking up in your head? Because again, as Tami said, I think you don't right now know the difference between what's going on with you and what's going on with your partner. So I think you focusing on you will give you a lot less reason to obsess about him, unless he's doing it without any kind of recovery, in which anyone would obsess. So thanks, Tami. That was good.
You're welcome. So anybody who's new to the group, please keep your questions in the Q&A. We don't pay attention to the chat because we've got lots of questions. So the next question, Dr. Rob, is how often are sex and porn addicts also sociopaths?
Well, first I have to describe what a sociopath is. So sociopaths, I don't want to spend too much time, but I sort of have to. So I want to explain narcissistic people because I am one. And so I can explain to you a little bit about that. My camera's dirty. Oh, that's awful. Okay. So narcissistic people
care about their cameras, clarity.
Exactly. We lack empathy. So when I go and do something, I'm not necessarily thinking about how it's going to affect you. I don't have empathy. Like if I wanted to go buy a new car and I saw one I wanted and we couldn't really afford it, and I just said, I'm going to buy it because I really like it, I would be lacking empathy for how you might feel, my spouse, about our finances, or maybe you wanted something to say about a car, you know, whatever. But that's the one I wanted. And so it's very narcissistic. But narcissists have or narcissistic people, as are all addicts, I could explain that in a minute. Narcissistic people, what did I want to say about that? When we find out that we have disappointed you, that we have hurt you, that have really let you down, we feel bad about it. And that's the gift of being narcissistic in treatment, is that I cannot treat anyone who doesn't have motivation. And most times the motivation for people coming to Seeking Integrity is, I'm in serious trouble with someone I love and I don't know how to make it better, and I need you guys to help me. I was going to say something else about it, but that doesn't mean they're sociopathic. In fact, it's unlikely that they are, because they are saying, I feel bad about this. Now, granted, when you're narcissistic, you feel bad about yourself. Like, I wish I hadn't done this. I'm a terrible person. Didn't I love my spouse? What is my spouse going to think of me? You know, that's all very narcissistic remorse, because real remorse sounds like, I can't imagine what they're going through. I can't imagine what their challenges are. I can't imagine what my wife is going through. So real empathy and compassion is feeling what they might be going through instead of being worried about how everyone's going to look at me or how I look at me. But nonetheless, narcissistic people can be brought to feel badly about what they've done, and then they really want to work to make it better. They also highly value their relationships, and we have pretty much a lot of fear of abandonment as narcissistic people. And so we work very hard to not make sure you don't leave, and we make it up to you and we make it better and all that, because we don't want another partner. We don't want another family. We want to be with you. Even though we haven't acted like it, that's what we want. But sociopaths are different. So the difference is sociopaths lack empathy. They can go out and buy that car and spend the money and not really notice until you get upset. But when you get upset, a sociopath doesn't say, oh my gosh, I think I did something wrong. A sociopath says, oh, well, you got upset. You know, if that's your problem. And, you know, I can play with the finance however I want. And you know what, if you really don't want it, I'll find somebody else to live with. In other words, sociopaths lack the connection to feel remorse. They may act remorseful, but that doesn't mean they genuinely feel it. And so sociopaths tend to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want it, just like an addict. But when they have consequences, they don't say, oh my God, I need to change. They say, how can I change the things out there? So a sociopath will say, I need a new family. I need a new spouse. I need it. You know, they are not looking at them as being the problem, and they never will. So I cannot treat sociopaths. I think, by the way, to a number, Tami, Seeking Integrity is going to open, it'll just about be 3 years in the spring. So I would say in the couple hundred people we've seen, or 100 something people we've seen, I've probably seen 2 or 3 real sociopaths. So I would say, 2 or 3 per 100, maybe something like that. Psychopath is another word for it.
Yeah, I bet it's even less than that, because we're seeing high acuity often, not always, but some of the cases that we are seeing, they've been to many other programs, and many of those we can help, but some of them, we can't. I want to back up too, because you talked about addicts and narcissists. An addict yeah, people call all the time. They go, my spouse is narcissistic. I'm like, yes, in active addiction, all of us are narcissistic, but we can learn if we get help, so we don't have to continue with that. But as you're saying, a sociopath, you learn to manipulate the situation, but you don't learn to have empathy. You don't learn to change how you're doing things.
I also think that sociopaths tend to do a lot more profoundly hurtful and selfish things than most sex addicts, because they really don't care how anybody feels about it. They're just going to move on if you create a problem. One of the things that's interesting to me about sociopaths, and we'll stop in a second, the more severe ones, the ones who are really violent and, rob banks and kill people and stuff, they like jail. I don't know if I told you that, Tami, but they're perfectly
No.
happy in jail because they get fed and they have a place to sleep and people talk to them and they don't have to do anything. One of the big key features of a sociopath is they want to latch on to other people to take care of them. And they want, we recently had someone who, well, I recently did a consultation, and Tami sets me up to do some of these consultations live with couples or individuals. And I was doing a consultation with someone who was clear, I thought really clearly a sociopath, because no matter what we talked about, he didn't regret it. He didn't feel bad about it. He blamed his spouse for it. And as Tami said, I want to say one more thing about narcissism. All addicts are narcissistic in active addiction, because, and this is the whole point of 12-step and stuff, is to turn our faces, turn the mirror against ourselves and see ourselves clearly. But if you think about a heroin addict who will abandon his family, and financial obligations to go use heroin, he or she may come back to that family and work 3 jobs to make sure everybody's okay when they get sober. That's a narcissist or an addict. Sociopath would say, who cares? They'll figure it out for themselves.
Okay, next question. Hello, I separated from my addict husband after 37 years of marriage. I only found out 5 years ago, and it was hard to leave him, but I did. I live peacefully now, but after almost 2 years without him, I still feel so sad sometimes. Grief is tremendous. Anything you can recommend reading? Should I start dating? I feel lonely. I don't miss him, but I miss the marriage I thought I had. Perfect. I say that all the time. Grieving the loss of the marriage you thought you had, grieving the loss of the partner you thought you had. Grief is real, and I honor that you're stepping into it. You're not trying to shove it on a shelf and go on your merry way. You're owning it. So thank you for being here.
And I would say, good for you for leaving. I think, I work with a lot of spouses who've been married. I mean, really, it's unbelievable, Tami, how many clients we get in their 60s and 70s. We have someone who's 71, 73, and they've been married 40 years, and they come into treatment because their spouse just realized that they have been looking at porn every single day during 40 years and also seeing sex workers, and so as you can imagine, I know you can imagine what it's like for 35 years of marriage to find out this. And so I really appreciate that there is a spouse here who just doesn't want to put up with it anymore. And I don't think that most of you are in that place, but I have seen people be physically and emotionally abused, and they keep saying, how can I make him or her better? As if making them better is going to make your life better. So I'm so glad you took care of yourself. The other piece, and I say this all the time, is that, let me say it in this way. I've worked with women who were physically abused, like in shelters and stuff. And they ask all the time, why would I still have feelings for him if he beat me up? Why would I have feelings for him, this person that abused me? And the thing is that we don't stop our connection with someone because something happened. People die and we grieve them for years. So in a sense, what happened to you, first of all, 37 years is a very long time to be married. It's probably I don't know how old you are, but probably at least half your adult life. And so all of a sudden, the mainstay, commitment, dependency, normalcy, stability of your life has shifted. And you're probably not 20. Which means the older we get, the harder it is to adapt to change. So all I'm saying is I think you are right where you should be. Anyone who's left a 37-year relationship may grieve it their whole life, because you did have some things there. It did have meaning to you. We're not black and white. We may hurt you. We may let you down. We may disappoint you, but we still do loving things, and we still have lives together that were meaningful. So I'm glad you're at peace. I wouldn't suggest dating. What I'd suggest is some therapy and going to some grief groups or maybe a grief workshop, because what you're doing is grieving, and it is tremendous, but it should meet some resolution. after 2 years, that doesn't mean you don't stop missing him, but it doesn't mean this longing to connect and this incredible loneliness that you're not together. That can go away with some work. The loss will always be with you like a scar, but the immediate pain of it can become much less if you are working and being supported by other people in grief about the loss of their relationships.
So
Tami?
email me, Tami, Tami at seekingintegrity.com, and I will ask specifically for the grief resources, because I've got a bunch, and let me know where you are, and I can hopefully help you find a good therapist too. But I would also encourage you, you're lonely. There's other people, like it doesn't have to be dating, but man, what are things that you haven't done in a while or have always been interested in doing? I mean, what would be of interest to you that you could go connect with people that also have a similar interest? And I think just being out among other people that share similar interests, or take a class, you want to learn something new, whatever. But I think doing something positive like that it won't take away the grief, but it will start to shift things. You'll learn something new. You'll meet some new people. You can have other connections and have some fun in different ways. I think you might find that helpful too.
I want to say one more thing about what you said, Tami. You always spring ideas for me. When I'm married, I don't really have to depend on myself for what we might do or where we might go. Usually I have someone to say, what do you think about this? Or do you have a plan? But now you're alone. And unfortunately, the responsibility that was being carried by the relationship, what should we do? Where should we go? Now you got it alone. You yourself alone have to find your own recreation, your own activities, and your own family, if you will. And this is what Tami's talking about. So my first thought was, how many girlfriends are you running around with, and going to a spa, or going or in a book club, or how are you relating to other people in ways that stimulate your mind and emotionally connects you with people? And the goal of leaving a relationship like this is not to be miserable. The goal is to begin to live your life and have fun. So I think first it is working through the grief, and also it's looking around and saying, oh, I like ceramics, let me take a ceramics class, or whatever that is, to start to grow your own life separate from what you had.
Next question. Could you explain the concept of eroticized rage?
Yes, and concept is the right word because there's really no proof of it, so to speak. But it's the idea that, for example, rapists are a good example of eroticized rage. If you've ever read about rape, you understand it's really not a sexual act. It's an act of control, and it's an act of power, and it's rageful. And so when you use sex to be, for example, I think also a lot of the Me Too people who use authority and power to get people to be sexual with them, and they're their boss, they're their, that really is rage, a lot of rage too, to take advantage of people in the setting where you are responsible for them. So to me, eroticized rage is simply when someone's sexuality becomes infused with these other feelings that they don't even know about, and then they're acting in ways around their sexual lives that don't necessarily make sense. And I think the extreme of eroticized rage would be rape.
Next question. Is sex addiction more difficult to recover from for someone who ranks higher? I ranked 19 on the sex addiction assessment. Those are
I would give,
typically people
ahead.
that are in, those are people that are inpatient. I mean, that's, that when you get to those kind of scores, those are, so what are your thoughts? Like,
I'm
is that
sorry, I'm listening to my
dozer?
dog go, my dog's going, "Ooh." I agree with Tami in the sense that, the more boxes you check, the sicker you are. I mean, that's how it goes. If you look at an eating test because you're overweight and it says, do you eat late at night? Do you eat in between meals? Do you eat a lot of sugar? And you check all the boxes, you have a more profound problem. If you drink once in a while, or you drink every single day, your problem is going to be different. I do agree with Tami that once the numbers get that high, that I would be worried that I might end up doing things or hurting people in ways that I don't want to. And that is what that test is there for. It is there to kind of wake you up and say, wow, this is, here, there, or here. And I appreciate your taking it and being honest. I also think that that number means that there's some real work to do. Yeah.
But I'm going to say there's real opportunity. I was a high scoring person on the addiction test too. And you know what, with gratitude, like it changed my life, because it like Dr. Rob said, it woke me up and I went, I have to do something about this. This is not something I can minimize and pretend it really isn't a problem. This is a problem. You know, I answered the questions. I ended up saying there's a lot of problems here. So I really.
And you went to treatment. I mean, you
I
did go to
sure did.
residential.
Yes. Yeah, I did. Because you know what, the next day I was already going, oh, I learned my lesson. I won't do that again. Denial was
Right.
massive, So yes, I would invite you again, reach out to me, Tami, Tami at seekingintegrity.com, or call the numbers on our website, 747-234-4325. Call. Happy
And
to
you
help.
also may consider, you may be someone who wants to start with one of the classes or a book. I think, part of I'd love to know about you, and we don't have time today, is where are you in the process? Because we can recommend and encourage different things depending on where you are. I do want to say to the group, though, that sex addiction and eating disorders, or sexual disorders and eating disorders, are the hardest ones to recover from. Because if you think about someone who's an alcoholic, no offense, Tami, but you can just stop and never drink again. It might be horrible to do it, but you can get there. If you're a gambler and you compulsively gamble, you can stop going to casinos and all that stuff and still have a great life. But nobody wants to have a great life and never eat again. No one wants to have a great life and never be sexual again. So these healthy behaviors that run off the rails, it's harder for us, since we're presented with them every day, eating and sexuality, and they are naturally occurring functions. It's harder for us to put that box around them, and what is sober, what is not, and live within that box, because we're not just putting it away. We have to deal with it every single day.
Well, we started off the evening. You asked about the calories in an egg, and I have struggled. Well, no, but I struggled with eating disorder. It was, yes, because abstinence is really clear with drugs and alcohol. You just, what it is, but with food, and it's, so pervasive and having to learn. But one of my things is, like, I don't calorie count, because that sets my head into a very negative place. So I've learned techniques and skills, but it's only because of recovery that I was able to do that. So there is hope. There is help. We can find paths through it. So, and there's tons of resources. If you haven't already plugged in on sex and relationship healing, all spelled out, where this webinar originated, but if you're watching it on YouTube, we have drop-in groups, webinars, podcasts. Dr. Rob's Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast, last I checked, has over 800,000 downloads. There's so many resources, including, like, you name the topic, it's probably on there. So.
Well, I wanted to say one more thing about this, which is about the person who wrote it, which is, I think you're asking the wrong question, because it doesn't matter to me how bad you think your problem is, or how minor you think your problem is. You have to get to work. And so even sitting back and saying, wow, am I sicker than someone else, is thinking. It's not an action. And an action is, I don't know where I rank, but who cares? I got to get to work. And so rather than looking at where you lie on the scale, as Tami said, it's a good wake up, good chance to go, wow, I didn't realize where I was. Now do something about it, and do it fast before this uncomfortable feeling goes away.
Yeah, because denial is a real thing. I wrote a blog about that, because it was like, people are calling me in crisis. It's really, really bad. I need help. Then you start telling them what help looks like, and it's like, well, it's not that bad. And, I don't really need help yet. So, and it kind of goes to the next person's question. My partner of 20 years has just decided that he is not a sex addict. He thinks it's a moral and religious constraint defined in marriage only, and wants me to read a book about the myth of it all. He's got hundreds of partners and 8 years behind my back. He believes he has an integrity disorder, among other things. So do I. But how does someone who will not identify as an addict get well? That's called denial.
What I'd like to speak to is his argument, and then maybe you could speak to the getting well part. We could split up the question. So I had an addict friend of mine, I have different stories about this, who used to have sex in public places, and a lot in the park, would pick people up as a gay guy. And when he was active in addiction, if you asked him, how come, aren't you worried about going to the park, or do you think that's a little bit odd to have sex in public? He would say, oh, well, those people aren't liberated. Those people aren't, they're really constrained sexually. They're just not having they're too conservative. If everyone, I remember him saying this to me, if everyone could, I remember this, it's out in nature. he said. I remember that. I do. He said that. So, I think this idea that related to your marriage is, if you make a commitment to something, it doesn't matter what he says about it. If he committed to being monogamous, that is the commitment you made and the commitment that you expect. And, I often say this to the clients. It's like, uh, uh, if I was working with someone and I signed a contract with them and they were working with me and I agreed that I'm not going to focus on anyone but this company. And then in my free time, I went out and got a part-time job with another company. That would be not only out of my integrity, I would be breaking a contract. And I would be kind of giving my word away because I would not have value, especially in my business. But for some reason, people, men in particular, who work so hard to have business and work integrity and would never break a contract or fraud or whatever that is, their marriage commitment, which is also a contract, just doesn't seem to be as meaningful. And I would say to you, how come that contract isn't as important to your spouse? Because he's dismissing it. I assume he made it 20 years ago. So did he go back to you? And this is fine, by the way, if your male partner said, I want to renegotiate our monogamy and I want to do this and you can do that. If you agree to that, who cares whether you're monogamous or not? That's up to the two of you as a couple. But if your partner just decided to go out and have sex with 100 people over 8 years and didn't happen to ask or mention it, then this person is disturbed. They have a problem. And Tami and I have run into a lot of people who devalue and dismiss the sex addiction model, diagnosis, whatever it is, because they want to keep doing what they're doing. We know people in the field who were working in sex addiction and they decided to go act out a lot. And then they decided, oh, this sex addiction thing is just a bunch of bunk. And they're therapists. But the truth is they wanted to act out and they wanted to have the kind of sex life they had. And by the way, he can have whatever kind of sex life he wants, except he's married to you. And if he wants to be with you, he's going to have to make some changes. Or now we move on to Tami's part.
Yeah, or you need, because I was sitting here reading this going, he's put your health, your physical health at risk. Hundreds of partners in 8 years. I hope you've had STD tests, and please keep getting them because like it isn't like you get it once and you like a COVID test. Oh, you don't have COVID. Well, no, because it can show up, 6 months or 2 years later. So you're like, you are at risk, unfortunately. But to me, it would be like, what do you need to do to set healthy boundaries for you? He can make up all the malarkey that
Bullshit.
he put in there. Yes, thank you. It's like, oh, it's just well, if he said I do to you and only to you, like Dr. Rob said, unless you guys renegotiated and you went, okay, it's all good with me, he's doing this in lies and secrets, and that is a lack of integrity. But it's someone who is that invested in not changing, they don't always get better. But the other thing is they won't get any help until and unless the consequences of changing are not as painful as the consequences of staying the same. So, it's therapeutic separations. I've had people hand up divorce papers. I've had people stay in relationships. So it's, what do you need to do to set up a healthy boundary for you, for your physical safety, for your emotional safety? What do you need to do to take care of you? Because he may or may not change. So, 2 years from now, if he's still, now he's got 150 partners, are you okay with that?
Yeah, and I agree with Tami. It's, what kind of marriage do you want? Like, you're sitting here saying, well, he's not this and he's not that and he's doing this, but it's your marriage, 50%. What kind of marriage do you want? Do you want to be in this marriage? Do you want to be in a marriage where you're being dismissed, your beliefs are being devalued, you're being told basically to bug off? And these are some of the most important issues in a marriage: monogamy, childbearing, finances. I mean, these are the big ones. It's not a minor issue. Like, I like eggs and Tami doesn't like eggs. So,
I love eggs.
And by the way, we named our program Seeking Integrity because all addicts have integrity disorders. And that means that they're living multiple lives. Integrity comes from the word integration, or bringing disparate parts together. So when you integrate something, you bring it into one. Disintegration is when everything is all over the place. So that's what addicts are. We are disintegrated. We have our family over here and our sex life over there and work and the affair, and it's all in little boxes. It is it's disintegrated. And so we're called seeking integrity because we are seeking to be one person with one set of language and one belief system, because I believe anyway that that's how people get happy, is being truly who they are without secrets.
Yeah, and I also was thinking, hundreds of partners, were they paid partners? How much money has he spent on his, so there are so many layers of this, but I just want you to know there are betrayed partner support groups on this site. We have multiple betrayed partner from a prodependent lens. Dr. Rob wrote a book about it. There's podcasts on that, but please join the betrayed partner groups. You will find support for you in those groups on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Okay.
I want to say something about the partners groups too, because I've had people go, some women in particular, and say, well, I don't want to go to that group because all those women are talking about us husbands that slip and don't have it right, and they're all messed up. And I don't think that's the right place for me. And of course, that's exactly the right place for you. It's really hard to see these other women or men, whatever group you're in, who've had their lives so broken and so invalidated. It's a lot like the 12-step programs. When you aren't told, you got to go this many times, you got to try different groups, you need to go for a while before you decide, do you like it, do you not? I have people who go to one meeting and they say, oh, I'm not like all those perverts, and they never come back because we're anxious. And oftentimes in a new group, we're looking for how we don't belong rather than how we do. So I recommend all you partners to listen with open ears. You don't want to be that person, but you are. And it's important for you to get support from people like you.
Next question. I'm a betrayed partner. During formal therapeutic disclosure, I learned about a lot of my partners acting out that occurred during happy family times and intimate date nights, experiences, etc. I feel I'm grieving the loss of these memories as I knew them, because now I know they were tainted by acting out, deception, compartmentalization of my partner's addiction. How do you recommend betrayed partners process this pain and grieving of previously fond memories that have been tarnished?
Hey, Tami, I want to toss that to you first, but I just want to start by saying I'm so sorry that you have these losses that you didn't deserve, you didn't ask for. You went in with open eyes and you've ended up with this. So, Tami, what are your thoughts?
And I think it is a grieving process, but it's not black and white. I think that's where the recognition comes in of, yeah, they were happy family memories and there was a lot of it. And yes, there's a little shadow now and it's not as lustrous as it was, but it doesn't, I would want to fight really hard to not let the addiction steal the happy memories completely away from me too. So I would be working extra hard on what I know is true about those. If it's happy family memories, were you with the kids and the kids were, splashing in the lake or whatever, and you have this grin on your face because you're thinking about, they're jumping off the dock. I don't know, but can you reframe some of those memories and find the true joy, the good stuff? Because just like you're talking about with the compartmentalization, and Dr. Rob talked about that a moment ago. Yeah, the addict has compartmentalized it. So they were showing up and making s'mores and still doing the acting out behaviors, but they were there making s'mores. So can that be a moment where you go, that was a moment? So it may be shifting the lens a little bit for you, but there's grief, there's absolutely grief that, you found out. And and you found out, during formal therapeutic disclosure. Hopefully you've had good support, in the disclosure process. It takes time. I mean, this is just hard stuff. So.
And your memories will never be the same. I mean, you will have a different view of them. And I wanted to, I don't think it's unusual for sex addicts to act out when we're feeling anxious. And what things that make us anxious are when we're having a baby, when there are financial problems, when I'm supposed to be intimate with you and I'm feeling anxious about it. In fact, pretty much anything that makes us anxious makes us want to run to this behavior. It's the hardest thing in the world to help partners understand that this really isn't about you. I think that's the greatest and most challenging experience I know for Tami and me, is trying to help you partners understand that sex addicts would have done this. Your partner would have done this no matter who they were with. They did it most likely with someone else at some point. And were you never in their lives, they would be doing this. You could dance on the head of a pin and be the most beautiful, attractive person in the world. Doesn't matter, because this is their problem. You know, if your partner were, I don't know, bipolar or depressed, you know, once you got them in therapy or something, the therapist wouldn't say, oh, let's look at your part in their depression. And it just doesn't work that way. So I encourage you to understand that your spouse has been really sick for a long time. And that illness has led them to acting in ways that are not healthy. Addicts are mentally ill. I mean, let's face it. Sorry, you folks, but and the best example of that I have is that just like depression or anxiety or bipolar, or when we get anxious and stressed out, we return to behavior, or we want to. And that's very much the same as someone who's depressed. When bad things happen, they get depressed. You know, we have a vulnerability to this, and that's why it takes a lifetime of work. I can't help with the last sentence, Tami, because I think you are going to be in the pain of grieving, you know, and I don't think anyone can help you with that. You're just going to have to go through it.
But there is grief support. So,
but not alone.
Yeah, right.
Not
Yeah,
alone.
I was going to say, you're not alone. So, okay, next question. I feel obsessed with my ex-affair partner. How can I get over this person? I don't want to feel this way.
Okay, hold on a second. I got to that one. Lost it for a second. Well, it doesn't matter what you feel. What matters is what you do. So I don't care how obsessed, be obsessed. Don't be obsessed. Talk about them endlessly. When I broke up a relationship many years ago, when I was in my early 30s, I talked to every single person about them. You know, were they this? Were they this? I could not stop talking about it because I was so broken and so sad about the end of a relationship. I was obsessed for a while, and I ended up depressed and on Medicaid, the whole thing, because I didn't want to live without this relationship. So I get what you're talking about. I think time. It takes time to get over this, but your obsession doesn't mean you have to. How do I say this? Well, this also goes back to something else we talked about earlier, which is when you're attached to someone and they're meaningfully, emotionally important to you, you don't just get over them because something bad happened. And, you know, in a way, I think the question is more, how can I tolerate the amount of time it will take me to get over this? What things can I do to help me get past this? But how do I get over them, or how long will it take to get over them? Or, you know, I think the answer, as Tami often says, is how can you support your life, diversify your life, and find your passions without being sexual or racing after this person?
And I read my ex-affair partner. So that to me means there's a spouse or someone there's somebody attached to me that really would like me to be paying attention to them instead of me obsessing about this person over here. So what are you doing to re-engage? If I read it right, and I don't know that I did, but what are you doing to re-engage with the person that you cheated on? Is, you know, one of the things I'm thinking about. And if you haven't read Out of the Doghouse, there's some really good things. But, you know, like anything else, you know, it's like you talk about, like, if you don't think about the pink elephant. Well, what do you think about the pink elephant? So what are you doing? You know, I'm going to go back to, we have those work groups, because in the work groups we get a foundation of you know, what a relapse prevention plan. How do we shift our focus? How do we shift our obsession? What are we doing that is the healthy stuff? And I would invite you to, the next group starts October 2nd. I would invite you to consider something like that, to reshift your focus so that you're able to think about, what do I want to do that's healthy? Be intentional about that. Be intentional about repairing the relationship with your partner, your non-affair partner. I think that would go a long ways to making you feel better about yourself and feeling less obsessed. Next question. Okay, sex and porn addict here, 90 days clean. Yay. 50 years old wife has phone with lots of evidence asking her to delete info on phone. She has seen everything on phone, videos, sex apps, etc.
Oh, I put up in the doghouse.
Yeah, I know, I saw that, but But
50-year-old wife has evidence asking her to delete info on the phone. She's seen everything. I'm not.
I don't see a question there. I'm going to go back to the others. So,
Sex and Porn Addict here, 90 days clean.
oh,
50-year-old
wait.
wife has phone with lots of
Okay, go ahead.
evidence. Lots of evidence. I don't know who's asking. Is this person asking her to delete info, or?
I got the impression that wife has a phone with lots of evidence asking her to delete info on the phone. Yeah, so it seems like I'm saying he's
Oh,
asking
right.
her to delete things, but she's seen everything. So
Yeah, my answer to that is good luck.
yeah,
Good luck.
no, she's going to
That,
save that. So
that's going to go, it's either going to be something that she will release when she's out of pain, and the two of you will send it up like something you throw in a fireplace to let go of emotionally, or she can take you to divorce lawyer with it. So I don't think she's
yeah,
giving it up either way right now.
no, concentrate
90
on,
days is
yeah,
so
yeah,
early.
yeah. So keep concentrating on how do you keep racking up more time, and make sure, like, if you haven't read Out of the Doghouse, I'm going to repeat that one. That, like, be doing the things that help build trust, because you're more likely, and don't do it just to get the phone back and delete things, but do it because you really want to change. So,
And I want to
okay.
add one more thing to it.
Go ahead.
Leave her alone. Leave her alone. You have given up the authority and ability to make these kinds of decisions in your relationship. You gave that up when you lied, when you cheated. Now your spouse gets to look at whatever they want for as long as they want, unless you want to no longer be with them. You have a choice here. If you want to leave them, you can do whatever you want, and she can do whatever she wants with that. But this idea that I want to get this off evidence, even the word evidence, sorry, just feels to me like some kind of legal thing. You want to just have it erased from your record. That's not what's happening here. Your spouse is holding on to the in their hands to the violation that they've experienced, and they're going to sit in that pain and hold on to that for a while. In fact, sadly, she'll probably, or he, or whoever, your partner, wife, she'll look at those pictures a lot, and she'll look at those things a lot, and she's going to drive herself crazy with it. But you put it in her hands. So I think before you focus on, can I get her to stop doing this or not do that? I agree with Tami. I think the focus needs to be on what you're doing for your healing. 90 days is really early. And it's certainly not a place where you can ask
Especially
anything of her.
for a
Go ahead, Tami.
50-year-old, that means those behaviors are, decades old. Even if you weren't acting out, like, those patterns, were set up long ago. So yeah, a lot of work to do, but I mean, you can get there. So keep doing what you need to do on a daily basis. This isn't going to see a therapist once a week for 50 minutes. That won't cut it. So I'm glad you're here, though. That's a good thing. Okay, next question. Chapter 2 of Sex Addiction 101, that's one of Dr. Rob's books, about porn, defines casual users, at-risk users, and addicted users. Can you quantify use? If someone spends 1 hour on porn once every 3 months, then they're casual, I assume. If someone spends 3 hours a day, then they are addicted, I assume. Can you give some numbers about the 3 user types? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that they have to do with numbers. I think they have to do with quality of life. So to me, an at-risk user is someone who, sorry, let's go to casual. Casual users are people who might look at porn occasionally and they enjoy it. And, whether or not they tell their spouse, which they should, but maybe they don't, but it's not an obsession. It doesn't drive them. It's occasional, or maybe for periods of time, it's a little more, and other periods of time, it's a little less. But casual means just what it means, there are casual drinkers, there are casual smokers. They don't necessarily have a problem. It's just, once in a while when they're with friends, they might do this or that. So I don't think that casual is not a number. It's how you live your life in relationship to this behavior. An at-risk person is someone who, when they're stressed, when bad things happen, when good things happen, they might, for periods of time, turn to the porn. So let's say, I hope this never happens when my dog passes away. And so, then I might start watching porn, every single day or several times a day. But over time, as my feelings go away and I'm feeling better, it just disappears. And so to me, that's an at-risk user, meaning that they tend to want to turn to this to soothe themselves, but it's not an absolute. It's not their sole way of doing it. And if they wanted to stop, they could. And if they can't, that's why they're called at risk. And addicted users are people whose, again, it's not about numbers. It's about how is the use of porn affecting your life. Addiction is never about numbers. It's not about I drink a glass of whiskey and the other person drinks 2 glasses of wine. It's how does my drinking affect my life? And so an addicted user is somebody whose sexual obsessions and whatever they're doing around sex and porn is leading them away from their priorities in life. So you're talking to friends less often, you're isolating more, you're not getting that work project done. Your spouse walked in and found you and is furious. You did it at work and your boss says, boy, you're in trouble. In other words, you can see how forward and back that the things you want, you're spending more and more time looking at porn and less time doing them. And commitments and beliefs and things that you held on before are quickly disappearing so that you can keep looking at the porn. Addicted users tend to lie, tend to manipulate, tend to have the behavior as their priority over their relationships and over other things in their life. An at-risk user might, during periods of time, put the porn first, but not regularly. And the casual user is picking it up occasionally and I would say having a little fun.
Next question. I'm a betrayed partner. My partner and I just had formal disclosure and have remained abstinent for over 90 days, as was advised by his therapist. We would like to work on reintegrating intimacy, both emotional and sexual, and have purchased the Burkhaus book on sexual reintegration. However, my therapist says he and I are not ready to start their therapy process yet because we should wait till after the impact letter and restitution letters. Is it recommended that couples remain abstinent until being able to begin sexual reintegration?
Well, I don't think there's a universal answer for this because I imagine that every couple is different. And I don't know of any rules around this that I know of, Tami. I do think, though, that here's my best statement about this, and I say it over and over again, is why would you want to have sex or be intimate with someone you don't trust? You know, if I don't trust you to not go out there and do this or that, if I don't trust that you're still lying to me, if I don't trust, you know, whatever you say, then I probably shouldn't have sex with you. Most of us pretty much learned early, you're not supposed to have sex with people you don't trust. Or at least most of the time. So I agree. I think that it depends on where you are, but your therapist knows. Your therapist knows where you are. And if they say, to be quite honest, I think you should wait a little while, I would wait a little while. Hopefully they're trained, they know what they're doing. If you did a formal disclosure and you remain abstinent, I assume that your work is going well. So why would you want to challenge anything else they have to say? They've gotten you sober, you've gotten you through disclosure. Why don't you just do what they say? Is it really that important to have sex right away? However, can you hold hands? Can you stroke each other's hair? Can you, one of you sits in the bathtub and the other person washes the other person? One's dressed, one's not. You know, can you do massages? Can you find all kinds of ways of being intimate? Because so often, sex addicts in particular, sex is intercourse. Intimacy is intercourse. That's it. And intimacy has nothing to do with intercourse. It could be intercourse, but it could be a million other things. Because intimacy is about being known and connected, not about the act in which you create the intimacy. Sex is one of the more profound forms of intimacy, but there are many ways to be intimate. So I'm wondering what you're doing to work on your emotional connection rather than being so focused on the physical. That's what comes to mind. And by the way, sex addicts are all about, when are we going to have sex? I want to have sex. It'll, for spouses, sometimes it makes you feel reassured. Like, if we're having sex, then they're not with someone else and I'm keeping them in line. And, you know, I don't think that's a very good idea, but I've seen spouses do that. I've also seen addicts want to have sex with you a lot because we think it will calm you down, make you love us, make you forgive us. And it's a place to go for sex. So I would ask the therapist, why do you think we are not ready? Because I don't think it's a universal issue, but clearly that is the feeling about you as a couple. So I would pay attention.
And I would be curious about what the timeline is for the impact letter and the restitution letter, like if those are imminent, you know. But I was thinking the same thing that Dr. Rob was talking about, you know, because like it sounds like the therapist addressed the sexual behavior, but I don't hear anywhere other than that one line about emotional. So I would really focus on how can you connect emotionally, you know, that would be, I think, valuable and a necessary step before reintroducing sexual relationships. So
yeah, I would actually feel better about, and honestly, if you guys were saying, how can I have more fun? How can we do more things together? How could we grow the connection between us after all this pain? Those are the right questions to ask. When can we have sex sounds like a sex addict to me, because that's our focus, and that's not really helpful.
So next question, I attend 4 to 5 meetings every week, and I always feel shame and guilt after sharing when I slip in meetings after feedback. Is this normal, or am I just being too sensitive?
Yeah, I think anybody would feel shame is not the goal. Shame is not where we'd like you to go. It's more like, wow, I made a really bad mistake and I really kind of screwed up and I need to get back on my feet and get to work. So, but that doesn't mean, I think you should feel bad. You know, when you make a promise to yourself and you lie and you break the promise, I think you should feel bad. If you make a promise to someone else and you break it, I think you should feel bad. So I don't know that there's a problem with feeling badly. I think it's, I wouldn't say normal, because I don't know what normal is, but it's healthy. Now, if you beat yourself up with tremendous shame and move into I'm a horrible person, that's not helpful. If you use the uncomfortable feelings when you have a slip to double up your energy toward meetings and therapy, you use, okay, I get back on that bus and work harder, then you've gotten the meaning of that pain. But to just feel like you're a terrible person and sit in that chair hating yourself, useless. Talking to your sponsor about what you can do to up your sobriety and get more support for not slipping, awesome.
Yeah, shame is useless. Guilt can be motivating. What I heard
Right.
was 4 to 5 meetings a week. I don't hear I'm working the steps. I don't hear I have a sponsor. I don't hear I'm working with a qualified therapist for this. I don't hear any of those other things. Me just parking my butt in a meeting, nice, good connection and all that kind of stuff. But it's, you know, when I first got into recovery, someone said this, the elevator to recovery is broken. Please use the steps. And I've remembered that, because if I don't work the steps, you know, I'm not going to get the promises of the 12 steps are all a reality, but we have to do the work. And that's where the beauty is. If 4 to 5 meetings isn't enough, Dr. Rob has talked about this before, if what you're doing isn't enough, up the level. What do you need to do? What's going to help you stop the slipping? You know, because clearly that's, you know, problematic. And I say this often too, it's like, you didn't slip in the moment when you slipped. You slipped, you know, 2 hours before when you know, got bored, or, you know, somebody looked at you crosswise or whatever. So it's one of those things where, you know, like doing kind of an analysis of what's going on. Where are you in the steps? So I'm gonna encourage it. And we've included on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, there's a video series about working through the steps, breaking them down line by line. Again, if you can't find what you're looking for, email me, Tami, Tami at seekingintegrity.com. So where'd you go?
Oh, I took a picture of you.
Oh, that's scary. So we've got lots more questions, but I do want to answer, is therapy essential part for recovery? After sharing in a recovery group feedback, I heard from others, it's that it's impossible to do recovery by yourself. Is that true?
Well, these are two different
Yes.
issues. I mean,
Yeah.
can you recover by yourself? No. You know, this is something, you know, it's like saying, can I heal from cancer by myself? No, you need experts, you need support, you need to go to a support group. I mean, there's a lot of work you have to do. It really isn't any different. You have an illness that requires help. And so, hold on a second. And you're not going to be able to help yourself if you, and you know, we often say, like, if you could have done it better, or you could have done it differently, you would. So we also say your best thinking got you here. So if your best thinking has got you acting out and struggling with betraying people and all that stuff, then probably you need the thinking of other people. Is therapy essential? No, it's not essential to get sober, to stop the behavior and work on becoming a better person. No one ever really needed therapy if they were involved with a 12-step program. Now, a couple of things. People who just stop and don't get support, we call them dry drunks. They're usually mean and frustrated and angry people because they've never learned to replace their addiction with nurturing and fun and love and recreation and peace of mind. So they're just walking around miserable and not acting out. If you go to therapy, I think there's a better, I think therapy is like a higher level. So if addiction means all that is just dealing with the addiction, it's not it's a lot of work. But the next level up is, how did I get here? Why am I in this place? We often talk about the addiction being like the tip of the iceberg, and the addiction is the symptom. So you can put a symptom at rest and stop the symptom. Absolutely. But if you want to go look at where it comes from, that's what therapy is. It's all the stuff that's under the water. And there's always a lot more to the iceberg that you don't see than there is that you see. So yeah, I think that if you end up being a sex addict, therapy is great. But not everyone, part of why Tami and this team has set up all of these free resources like podcasts and drop-in groups is because we're very aware that some people can't afford therapy. We run a treatment center, but we're very aware that most people won't be able to go there for various reasons. So all of this stuff, which is involving other people, every group, everything we do involves connecting with other people, except maybe, yeah, everything does. I think I would be in all of those places. And by the way, go everywhere you can. Go to every group, everything, until you find what works for you. But I think therapy is always a good tool toward finding peace within yourself.
And I agree. I needed, both individual and group therapy beyond my 12th. I was sober. I was absolutely sober. I was doing stuff, but I wasn't, I still had these issues, and they were the underlying issues. And to be willing to work on that and get the freedom from that was, and it was years in. It wasn't like I did this the first 10 minutes I was sober, but being willing to step into that and go, I know there has to be more, because I see other people having more, and I believe that it was worth, I mean, every penny that I've spent on therapy and treatment was worth it for the gift of recovery I have, the serenity I have now. Totally worth it. So.
And I want to add one more thing. A lot of times when people come to the treatment program, come to Seeking Integrity, because they feel so awful about themselves and what they've done, the biggest question they want to ask in the therapy environment is, how did I get to be this way? Why do I have this problem? And those are great questions, and they can be comforting and help you be at peace with yourself. But hear me, therapy is great, but the acting out, that takes it takes a whole different stance and different kind of work. Therapists can push you into that work, but ultimately a therapist is not going to get you sober. You're going to get you sober, and the world of sober people is going to get you sober. What's going to bring you peace of mind inside of you is more likely to be therapy. Oh, by the way, and every guy who comes to our program says, am I a bad person? I know I'm a bad person because I've done all these bad things. And part of treatment is saying, I don't think you're a bad person, but you're a really broken person. And making that shift from being a bad person to being a broken person takes away all the shame. Because if you could have not done it, you would have not done it. Sorry, Tami, I know we need to stop.
No. But I was like, and I've had a couple of people that get really upset with being called broken. I'm like, I would way rather know that I'm broken, and there's Gorilla Glue out there to help me put the pieces back together again, than to just go, I'm a hot mess and there's no help, there's no hope. So I'm grateful. So
yeah, I mean, if I can accept that I have an issue, then I can work on it. And that it came from somewhere. If I don't want to accept it, then I can't grow.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
And people who go, do some of the things we do, they're broken just by their behavior.
Right.
So thanks
Tami. Everybody. We'll be back next week, and join all the other resources on sex and relationship.
I'm hungry. I'm going to go eat some eggs.
Me too.
I'll see you later.
Bye.